quality of life has to do with, do I feel like I'm living a fulfilled life?
How do you figure out what makes you happy?
Setting those things up for the new year, I think is helpful.
Or starting a business?
Or
Maybe you don't want
starting
to
a
work for
business.
anybody at all. That would be you.
That would be me.
This is something that's fascinating to me about you is that you've grown this huge following the past couple of years on Instagram. Why are we so drawn to want to reinvent ourselves?
We are from birth. It is instilled in us that the goal of life is to be happy. Our brains aren't wired to just be happy. The more you avoid internal emotional discomfort, the more your behaviors are going to take you away from the things that you value.
From health to relationships to business, for a lot of people, January is a time of reevaluation. But how do you change your life if the only thing that's changed is the calendar? In this podcast, I speak with psychologist Dr. Jamie Zuckerman about the science behind building habits. And she gives concrete strategies about how to improve your life. She also explains why some people fail while others soar. Dr. Zuckerman also talks about how she used social media to improve her business and how you can do it too. And I also asked her, from a psychological standpoint, what leads to happiness? Now, you may be wondering, why am I recording this intro in a car? Well, for me, I just needed to start. Instead of putting off posting this video for a few more days until the background was perfect or the kids were quiet in the house, I decided to just record it. And it turns out acoustics are pretty good in the car. Now, before we get into the interview, please like and subscribe. It really helps this fledgling YouTube channel to get off the ground. And with that, here's my interview with Dr. Jamie Zuckerman.
Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Jamie Zuckerman. Dr. Zuckerman is a psychologist, coach, and consultant. And happy 2024. It's the new year.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So this is the time of the year when a lot of people think about new beginnings. Good thing, bad thing, indifferent. Can we get into tricks? Is it dangerous to be thinking about it this way? I mean, we tend to think of new beginnings, but is that like a tricky place to get into?
Yeah. So those that work with me know this. I'm not a big fan of New Year's resolutions at all, actually. Behaviorally speaking, they make no sense. And they really don't take into account a lot of things. So I always say it's never a bad time to make changes, but it is a bad time to make changes if you don't have the support system in place that you need, if you don't have very structured behavioral goals that you can measure, that you can define. And if you're doing it at a time where your mood emotionally, you're just not ready. You're just not ready.
What's like the easiest way to fail?
So I think what happens is, like you said, new beginnings, right? So everybody's, and we see commercials for gyms and things like that. And I think everybody really does this with really good intentions, right? Like they really want to make these changes. We're so busy during the year. We have no cues, really, unless you're in therapy, to make changes throughout the year, except this season. So
Right,
it's really
the clock changes, the time changes, the date changes, you get a new calendar.
Exactly. Everything shifts. The problem is that the only thing that truly changes time-wise is 24 hours. So there's no difference between you December 31st and January 1st. Now, that being said, I think if you're prepping for a while, I'm going to make this change on January 1st, and that's your start date, and you have everything in order. Let's say you're going to start to eat healthier. How many days a week? What meals are you cooking? And if you've never cooked healthy in your life, don't say you're going to cook every single night. Cook one night a week. Start there. Get everything you need, get everyone on board, find your recipes ahead of time so that when you make that goal, you're not kind of struggling and it's easy.
What are
That's
some
the
of the
thing.
biggest goals that your clients want to set?
So usually I help them reframe their goals because they'll come and they'll say, I want to be healthier. And I'll say, great, me too. What does that look like for you? Because healthy for you is different than healthy for me. So I make them what we call operationally define those goals. So things under the umbrella of healthy. I want to eat healthier. Again, like I said, how many times per week? I want to go to the gym. That's great. But do you even like the gym? So what I have people do is also do a value reassessment this time of year to see what their values are. Because if your goals are not in line with your values, there's zero motivation to make those changes.
Right. If you hate the gym, but maybe you love to dance.
Correct. I'm a perfect example. I know, and I know myself, and I have done this repeatedly to myself, and then you end up making yourself feel horrible. I don't work out. I hate it. I won't go to the gym. And I know myself. Even if I have a trainer, I won't hold myself accountable. I won't go. But I make time to play tennis at least 5 times a week.
Oh, that's great.
Right. That's my sanity. That's my exercise. But that's what I like to do. Right. So we can't just say, okay, well, I'm going to go do yoga. But if you don't like yoga, you know, or let's say you do like yoga, that's your thing. Instead of creating these new goals for ourselves, take an existing goal that you already are familiar with and modify it. Instead of doing this kind of yoga, do a different kind of yoga. Instead of cooking this cuisine, try a different cuisine. So you're modifying existing goals, which is less of a learning curve during a very stressful time because we're also coming out of a very stressful time in the holidays. And so to take on a goal to change or to achieve right after we come out of this, I need time to unwind after the holidays,
Yeah.
not start changing things.
Okay, so you've got eating and working out. So the health goals is one
Health
umbrella.
goals are
What
big.
what are some other popular things that people want to change about themselves?
Some people say I don't want to get into as far as the health goes, I think that the relationship stuff falls under that too. I'm
Mhm.
not going to get into unhealthy relationships. Okay, well, what does that mean? Right. I try to have people stay clear of the no more negativity because I don't know what that means. They don't know what that means. It's just a nice meme, right? To use on social media. So I have them define it. And we kind of they come in more with an umbrella idea and I help them. So I would say health, relationships, um, things like
Professional.
actually like they want to read more, they want to
Oh, that's
spend less
nice.
time on their phones. That's a big one. Decreasing social media so they're more present at home.
Got it. Are people making professional goals, work goals, career goals?
Yeah, I don't see that as much. New Year's resolutions, at least with my patients, are tend to be more kind of self-focused and not in a negative way. Um, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think those types of goals are healthy too because they're very measurable. Like, right, did you look for new jobs today? Yes or no? How many interviews did you have? That kind of thing. Maybe working with a career coach. And so maybe setting those things up for the new year, I think is helpful.
Or starting a business?
Or
Maybe you don't want to
starting a
work for
business.
anybody at all. That would be you.
That would be me.
I want to kind of pivot real quick because we're
Mhm.
talking about New Year's resolutions. This is something that's fascinating to me about you is that you've grown this huge following the past couple of years on Instagram. You're Dr. Z Psychologist, and that first of all, why did you decide that you wanted to do that? When did you get on Instagram?
So it's actually a funny story. This was now 3 years ago. The year before, 3, 4, going on 4 years. Oh, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. And my babysitter for my kids, we were in Margate, New Jersey in the summer, and I said to her, "Do psychologists have Instagram pages, or is that cheesy?" Those are my exact words to her. She looks at me, she's like, "That's kind of cheesy, but who cares?" So I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna make one." That's how it started. I had no expectations at all. And I think more so because of the way my personality is and the way I conduct therapy. I'm not very, like the good vibes only type stuff. So I really wanted to post things for people that were very behavioral, that people could read and relate to. And so I just started posting things, at least in the beginning, that I read and I was like, oh, that that stung, right? And
Right.
I started posting it. And then it just grew. And especially during COVID, I think because people, had obviously a ton of mental health stuff going on. Substance abuse was through the roof, domestic violence was through the roof. Um, and people had no outlet. And so during COVID is when it really kind of took off, but I had no expectations. And then it just kind of grew.
More than 100,000 followers, 100 and nearly
I think it's
what,
like 100
120?
something like, yeah, 100.
Something
Yeah. I think I
that
looked
it in a short amount of time, somebody that has no, like, not a social media person, and
mm-mm,
it just blew up.
blew up. Yeah. Yeah. It was a little crazy. It was, yeah.
What were you posting every day? Were you just like, I'm just doing this?
I wasn't, I post a lot. I think now because people expect me to and they look for it. I think the biggest thing about that is the consistency. So you can't really post in spurts because it just it throws things off and then people get a big dose of everything at once and it's hard to take in. So I try to post more so consistently rather than, dump things on people all at once. I tend to keep to a very kind of specific theme. Um, you know, I tend to post things that are more direct, a little bit more blunt. Um, and I stick with the toxic relationships, but I also really like to work with people on depression and anxiety because that's always a part of these toxic relationships and just our day-to-day life and our stress.
Has it helped your business, your private practice?
Yeah. Yeah, considerably. The coaching aspect of it really took off because I was able to reach people from all over the world, really from all over the world, which was very cool, rather than just, in my little pocket. Um, it allowed me to specialize a little bit more. I started my podcast, and that really kind of connected me to a ton of people. I have to tell you, I have met some of the most fascinating, intelligent, just really cool people on social media through my Instagram page, like professionals of all kinds. And it's just amazing. And I think that the one of the things that I still to this day read it and I'm like people think I don't read the message. I may not respond to all of them, but I read all of them. And I think the nicest thing, and I think the thing that motivates me the most is when I have people that'll send me messages, strangers saying, I never knew what this was. You've put a name to it for me. You've given me strategies. You've really helped my life. And it's like, it's overwhelming, but I mean, that's why I do it.
Wow. All right, so let's talk about psychology. What are some, like, top, say, three ways that we can be healthier this year mentally?
Um, Make sure your goals are not mood based. Make sure they're behaviors that you can actually check off. Did I do that? Yes or no. So, you don't want your goal to be, I'm going to be less frustrated with my children, but you can say, I'm going to be off my social media from the hours of this to this, which ultimately translates into being more present, which ultimately translates into being less frustrated. So you really want to operationally define your goals. That's number one. Number two, definitely reevaluate what your true values are. So values are, I value being a good friend. And from that, then you can get your goals. I'm going to make sure that I text back at least 3 people a day. Did I do that? Yes or no? Because again, it's in line with your value of being a good friend, let's say. So you want to make sure that they're following that path. And then the last thing is make your goal. First of all, have patience with yourself. We hate change, even if it's healthy, even if it's better for us. We would rather sit in familiar crap than make changes for like healthy reasons. Make your goals insultingly small. So if you have the goal of wanting to go to the gym 4 times a week, but you haven't been to the gym in 30 years, I will tell people sometimes, I want you to go to the gym literally for like 5 minutes, walk around and leave. And they'll say, well, that's ridiculous. And I say, exactly, because it's not about actually what the goal is. It's about that sense of mastery so that the next time you go for 15 minutes, it doesn't seem so difficult, and then an hour and so on. So you want to start like embarrassingly small.
Is that how you build habits?
Yeah, exactly.
You start
Because
with the small thing.
yeah, you have to start very small because then one, you habituate or you get used to the discomfort of not wanting to start, and you give yourself the opportunity to show yourself that you can do this. And if you get sick one day and you can't go to the gym, you're now not going from going 5 days a week to not going at all for a week. And there's kind of steps to take now that you can get back up there. Cause I think that's where we fail most often is when we take a break.
Now, is this also how we make bad habits? We just, oh, it's just a little break or a little thing. And then because it's a small thing that always starts.
It's a small thing and it's like that leaky faucet and it's just trickle. And then before you know it, your entire kitchen's flooded.
Yeah.
Listen, it takes a lot of accountability on yourself to be able to take that pause. I always say the power's in the pause, to take that pause and say, I'm doing it again. Get back into it. But it's much easier to get back into it when the goal is like really, really tiny.
I want to talk about happiness. Since COVID and now, people have changed jobs, and a key theme over the past several years has been people think, we had a big life world event, and people
Yeah.
started to reevaluate their happiness. So maybe how do we get back to, how do we do that? How do you, maybe you haven't done that. Maybe you didn't do that when COVID first hit. Maybe you're still in your job, or you're still, or whatever it is. And how do you figure out what makes you happy?
So again, it goes back to the values. I think you really have to start from that because that's kind of your core identity. Um, and understand that happiness is a mood, right? So we don't want to have it as a goal because it's fluid. What makes me happy today may not make me happy later on tonight. So you want to make sure that it's fluid, it's flexible. And I think what COVID did, it was really one of the first, at least in my lifetime, and the only thing I have to compare it to, like that was that heavy, was 9/11, right? But it was different in the sense that 9/11 had a distinct beginning, middle, and kind of an end, right? It was an event. It was a one-time type event. Whereas COVID
Are
was
we
not
still
a
in it?
one. We're still in it.
So
There was
long.
no real beginning. There was no real middle. There's no end. It's so uncertain. People had totally different views on it. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask, red zone, yellow zone, green. I mean, it was
Also,
such.
some people's lives were devastated, and other people did really well during COVID.
Correct. And so there was a lot of what we saw, moral fatigue, where by the end of it, people were just like, I don't care anymore, which we never would say. We would never want to harm anybody else. But people were getting to the point where, like, I'm going to the grocery store and I'm not wearing a mask. And it was like almost like protesting, right?
Right.
But I think the biggest thing for COVID and what I saw with my patients and friends and family was it really made us like consider our own mortality. And I think it really scared the crap out of people because every single one of us knows somebody that had COVID. If we didn't have it ourselves, we all know someone that got really sick. We probably all know somebody, unfortunately, that passed away.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
That it was the mortality. That's what
Yes.
it was. And people are
Yeah.
like, this is my
We
life.
can die.
And so I better do what I love now.
Correct.
There
Correct.
was an urgency for people to find their purpose.
Because it affected everybody regardless of, maybe if you had underlying conditions, but generally speaking, I mean, it affected everybody. It wasn't an isolated event in a
In one
particular
way or
area.
another, yeah.
So I think people really felt this loss of control over their life, so to speak, and they had to confront their own mortality. But even more so, it's one thing to confront your own mortality and know that you have control over certain things like how you eat and how you live and decisions you make. We were kind of limited with this. I mean, you just kind of do the right thing, wash your hands, wear a mask, don't go out, test it. But other than that, it was out of our hands.
Well, so the world has opened up and we're traveling and we're doing all the things, even though all the things that we did before, but it's still in the back of of our minds.
Yeah.
And give us like a worksheet. Like, what would we do to figure out, okay, now I got to find my purpose. I got to figure it out.
Yeah, I think the first thing that I always tell people is whenever there is this traumatic events make us kind of revisit who we are and what we want in life. And it varies like based on what's traumatic for you, what's traumatic for me. But people always look to get back to how it was before the trauma. That's the problem. once a trauma happens, not only does your brain change, but you change, your core changes. That's what makes it traumatic. And so there's this acceptance that has to take place that there is always going to be a shift that happened, and it changed you, and you have to accept that. And that's not a bad thing, but it's kind of taking these life circumstances and events and moving forward. It's like anything else. If you lost a parent or you lost a friend, it changes you, and you accept that. You don't expect to get back to where you were prior. So I think it's much easier to set and maintain goals when you take that along with you rather than constantly pushing against it, because you're not the same person. We're not the same as we were before COVID. It's always in the back of our minds.
And I feel like the world has just changed since then. I feel like that's so far away because there's been the war in Ukraine, the war in Israel and Gaza.
Yeah.
And so many people are invested in these world events that,
Mhm.
we're so far beyond that.
We are. And I think that we have constant access to it. That's what also made COVID different and makes things going on now different is, 10 years ago, it was there, but it wasn't in our face constantly. You can't get away from now. So there's no way it's not going to change you. It's a part of your day to day.
Right. What are ways that we can just improve our quality of lives? What are some ways that we can improve our quality of life in 2024, do you think, as a therapist?
Yeah, I really think it's focus on the things that you truly enjoy, like that you genuinely enjoy. And even if it's something as simple as, getting outside of your house for 5 minutes to go walk to the mailbox and get your mail, something that you enjoy, that's manageable, that's doable, that makes sense. Because quality of life has to do with, do I feel like I'm living a fulfilled life? And if you are not living along the lines of those values, whatever they are, you will not feel that you are living a fulfilled life. And therefore, your quality of life is going to suffer, right? Obviously, our health. I always say that's number one, our health. Whatever you can do within your means, within your financial means, within your social means, within your, how your schedule, do. Because even the tiniest changes can really impact your quality of life as far as health goes. I think that's probably my number one thing.
Is health, quality of
Yeah.
life with health.
Yeah.
The,
Yeah.
the schedules can be changed. So
Schedules can be changed, but, for people say eat healthy, right? So let's say I always use this as an example. Like, the reality is cooking healthy is extremely expensive. Not everyone can go to, stores and buy avocados and eat them. I mean, we have to be realistic. And so that's why I want to make sure that people understand you set these goals, these quality of life goals or health goals within your means. You don't want to add more stress and pressure. You also don't want to feel like your goals aren't quote good enough, because that defeats the whole purpose.
What did you say? Insultingly small.
Insultingly small. Like, maybe you eat McDonald's twice a week and your goal is to eat it once a week. That's great. Like, that's still in the right direction. It's within your life. Maybe you're on a college campus and like that's all you really have access to. You cut it down one day a week.
What is like the psychology of like these New Year's resolutions or changes? What is it about? Why are we so drawn to like want to reinvent ourselves?
I think because we are from birth, it is instilled in us that the goal of life is to be happy. Our brains aren't wired to just be happy. If they were, we'd all be dead, because we wouldn't be vigilant when we cross the street and look both ways. We need some level of anxiety, right? We need to feel anger at times. These are all human emotions. We can't just feel happy, and our brains are wired for survival and adaptation, not happy. So we already start out with these goals of happiness. I just talked about this the other day. Then we're thrown into the world of Disney, which is like teaches us these unrealistic expectations about relationships. And so between that and your goal is to be happy, those two things to have chronically and constantly in your life are so unachievable. It's so unachievable.
What happens to people that are not able to feel the full range of emotions?
Oh, it depends. It depends. Is there like a neurological reason why that's happening? Is there, um, is it an avoidance of some sort? Like it's too painful, so you're going to do whatever you can to not feel it, whether it's not talk about it, make yourself so busy at work, drink, whatever it is. But people don't like feeling uncomfortable, so we do things that we don't realize we're doing to avoid feeling uncomfortable. Like worry is a perfect example. As long as we're worrying, we're not present. As long as we're not present, we're not feeling our stuff. So even things like that is kind of an indicator that people don't want to experience the full range of emotions. It's scary and it doesn't feel good.
Why are some people afraid of certain emotions and other people are just lay it all out there?
I think it's upbringing. I think it's the patterns that you have. How are you um what was the response if you were crying at home when you were younger? Were you told to get over it? Were you told like, fix it? Or were you told, okay, let's sit with it? I mean, it really depends on the messages that were instilled in you growing up.
Um, and how do you even know when you have to like I guess with therapy, you probably ask people like, why are you here?
Yeah,
How do you even know when you have something to work on? Like how do you know what you don't know?
I love that question. So what I tell people and what I think usually brings people in is that the more you avoid internal emotional discomfort, anxiety, fear, anger, sadness, the more you avoid it, the more your behaviors are going to take you away from the things that you value. And people end up engaging in behaviors that start to affect work, affect relationships, affect their health, affect their sense of self, their friendships. And they'll say, like, this isn't working anymore. And when they work on things, they realize that the reason why those things are happening, right? Or at least their responses to it, we can't control other people, but is that there's usually some sort of emotional avoidance going on that, given the skills to sit with it and engage in healthier behaviors, they usually can, majority of the time learn how to tolerate that discomfort because you're not going to get rid of it. And trying to get rid of it actually makes it worse.
So going back to our initial conversation about the New Year's resolution, how do you know when it's time to make a change, emotionally or otherwise?
I mean, I think it's the decision to make a change. I think it's never a bad time. I think when you actually do it depends on, do you have the structures in place, the support you're going to need? Do you have it written out? Do you have it broken down? Do you have everything you need ready for you? And then I think it's a good idea to start doing it then. I kind of, it's not a hard fast rule, but I don't like people making big behavioral changes between like Thanksgiving and New Year's. I just think it's so chaotic. It's like, why take it on right now?
Right. There's always time.
Yeah.
Um, and you've made a lot of small changes business wise over the past several years that adds up to big changes.
Yeah.
With the
Yeah.
podcast is a new development, right?
So I had a podcast 2 seasons in and then took a break. And then kind of we are in the process of revamping it and we're going to relaunch it hopefully either this month or next month. And yeah, I love that. I actually love that part of my work that came about because of this, like all these, like you said, these small changes, like meeting people like you and doing things like this and educating people and writing and podcasts. And I love that part of it. I love being able to share information, accurate information with people.
I'm all about the information and the storytelling as well.
Mm-hmm.
I have to ask you, how much of the business has now evolved from the private practice to the everything else, the coaching or the media or the like what is the business now?
It's all of it. It's all of it. So now I have psychologists working for me. I still see my patients. So I still have my practice in Pennsylvania to see Pennsylvania residents, and then the coaching aspect allows me to see people all over. So that's kind of another aspect of it. And then I have the writings, my books, and then I have the podcasts, um, and then being on other people's podcasts has been a really big thing as well. yeah, it's just, it's all, honestly, it's all of it. It just really grew into these like little pockets of very cool things.
One step at a time. What would you
Yeah.
say to somebody? This might be a time where somebody is like, "Oh, I'm not sure if I like my career or if this is the right thing for me." Um, or maybe they love it and they want to try different things.
Mhm.
What tips would you give them to do different things?
Again, I like to focus on the behavior part of it. So I would ask them, how will you know if you're unhappy at your job? What will it look like? And they'll say, well, I don't feel like going, okay, but I can't see that. So is that measured by, am I late? How many days am I late? How many days am I taking off? Am I using my vacation days? Am I missing meetings? Am I missing deadlines? Like literal things that you can look at that you can put under the umbrella of not happy, right?
Oh, I never thought
Um,
about like being sick or taking days
oh yeah,
as being
burnout.
unhappy.
Because burnout is very different than depression. Burnout is isolated to your employment. When it starts to trickle out, then you're at risk for depression. But I mean, if
What
you
does
think
that look like when starts to trickle out? What the depression? What does that look like?
I mean, that looks like you get home and you don't want to talk to anybody. And so you start slowly isolating yourself because you don't want to talk about work. You don't want to hear about everybody else and how they're doing well, or this one got a promotion, or this one got a new job. You just don't want to hear anyone's opinions. You don't want to go to holiday dinners and tell people, I'm leaving my job. What are you going to do? And how are you going to make money? So I think it trickles into that. It makes you more isolated. Um, it makes you anxious. Like, am I going to be in this situation forever? How am I going to get out of it? I don't know what I want to do. And then, for people that don't know what they want to do, again, I go back to the values. How will you know if you're happy at your job? What will that look like? And by doing that, they kind of will start to, well, I really enjoy, I'm at my best when I'm around kids, right? So, okay, well, what are some things, are you working with children now? No. Why not? I don't know. Okay, well, what would and you really try to make it very not abstract
It's like a
because,
worksheet that you have to do.
yeah, it's like you just keep breaking it down until it becomes something that you can actually take like an action on.
What do you think of when you think of 2024?
I'm tired.
It's been a long couple of years, hasn't
I
it?
just like 2024, like I just need it to just let me breathe. Like God, I really just I mean, I know it's cliche, but I really just need people to just get along. Even if you don't agree, even if you hate each other, just be civil. It's like, that's
We've
all I
seen
ask.
this since 2016, people fighting with each other, arguing online. We've seen this with the protests that are going on now.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
there's a
here's the
lot of
thing. And I know we've talked about this. I mean, I talk, whatever you're Democrat or Republican, whatever side you're on with a war, when you start to when you start to what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of uh like voice your opinions and your values in an aggressive, hateful manner, you start to lose what you're standing for in the first place, because then it's like the ridiculous violence is what becomes public, not your message. And I say that for anybody.
yeah.
Like there's something to be said for peaceful again, or like peaceful rallies for pro-life, pro-choice. I don't care what it is, but it's the peaceful nature of it that it's like the silence is what gets your message across. Like the not
The
the
listening.
the anger aspect of it. And I just hope for less of that.
So, as we wrap this up, tell us like what is one specific thing we can do to be kinder to each other?
I think take that pause and ask yourself in that moment, am I responding to this person directly, or am I responding to something else? Is my response disproportionate to the context right now at this very moment? And if it's louder than the context itself, you need to take a pause and reevaluate your response. So I think that's super, super important, is to be very present when you feel that ugh feeling.
A lot of clues to how we're feeling when that happens. Dr. Jamie Zuckerman, thank you so much. You can also see Dr. Z online at Dr. Z Psychologist. Anything you want to plug?
My books, workbooks, very behavioral basic. We've been talking about one on anxiety called Find Your Calm, and one on setting goals and maintaining them, called Find Good Habits, and you can get them on Amazon and Target, Barnes and Noble. And then, just keep an eye out for my podcast. That should be in the next month or two. And my website, drjamiezuckerman.com, for all my therapy, coaching stuff on there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. Please subscribe. And also, if you want to be part of the conversation, please do so in the comments. I'd love to hear what you thought about it and who you think I should interview next. Also, please do all the things, of course. It's a way that we build community on the channel. Thank you so much for sticking with me, and I will see you in the next interview.